Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Translation from Sanskrit to English by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Draupadi Chattadagyaya Patinam Anapekshatam Vasudeve Bhagavati Yekantamatirapatam. Translation. Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, were leaving home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Both she and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and attained the same results as their husbands. This is in the context of the Pandavas leaving home at the end of their life, and Draupadi is also following. Purport. When flying an airplane, one cannot take care of other planes. Everyone has to take care of his own plane, and if there is any danger, no other plane can help one in that condition. Similarly, at the end of life, when one has to go back home, back to Godhead, everyone has to take care of himself without help rendered by another. The help is, however, offered on the ground before flying in space. Similarly, the spiritual master, the father, the mother, the relatives, the husband, and others can all render help during one's lifetime, but while crossing the sea, one has to take care of himself and utilize the instructions formerly received. Draupadi had 5 husbands, and no one asked Draupadi to come. Draupadi had to take care of herself without waiting for her great husbands. And because she was already trained, she at once took to concentration upon the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The wives also got the same result as their husbands in the same manner. That is to say, without changing their bodies, they reached the destination of Godhead. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur suggests that both Draupadi and Subhadra, although her name is not mentioned here and Subhadra's name is not mentioned, got the same result. None of them had to quit the body. Draupadi has been serving her husbands faithfully all her life. Now they've all left home. Yudhishthira went first. Yudhishthira has been served by his brothers faithfully all his life. He left them without saying anything. Just left them one by one. They all followed him, and Draupadi also followed. But Yudhishthira acted as if he's just no relationship with anyone. So this might seem cruel and cold and unfair. Draupadi is being neglected after she's served her husbands, but they are now fully preparing themselves for imminent death. Although their death, as we learn here, will not be like that of ordinary people. They'll go back to the spiritual world in their own bodies, which suggests their bodies were never material in the first place. But this is the system. At least at the end of life, those who are grihastas, they have to leave everything, because anyway you have to leave everything, and just ekantamati, here it's stated, ekantamati, a full absorption in Krishna, forgetting all other things. So that's the system, that one has to, as if cruelly, leave everything and everyone behind. so that one's focus is not dissipated. If one sees one's relatives, friends, and one may think that, or they may remember some activities that they had previously, and some material affection may arise. Of course, in the case of the Pandavas, they're all pure devotees, but in their own mind they're not, which is one symptom of pure devotee. Everything they do is only for Krishna's pleasure, but they think by the power of Yoga Maya, they think that we're not pure devotees. And so they take the path of the ordinary person who wants to go back to Godhead. Of course, anyone who wants to go back to Godhead is not ordinary. In this world, they're extraordinary. But for most people, going back to Godhead means what is that? Mukti hitvanyata rupam swarupena vyavastitihi. To become liberated from this world means to give up one's present form and accept one's real, actual form, spiritual form. Now the Pandavas, they went back to Godhead in their same bodies, but along with the form that is to be given up, that means the present body that we have, is also to be given up all the attachments that go with it, and the whole way of thinking. With the body comes a whole matrix of bodily identifications and attachments, and one has to practice becoming completely detached from these if one is to go back to Godhead. Otherwise one will be propelled into another body. So by the mercy of Krishna, as one gets older, everything becomes very difficult. Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Vriddha Kala Ailo Shab Shuk Bhagalo. Now the old age has come and all happiness has gone. It's an inverse proportion. As one goes up in age, and then one's ability to enjoy the senses goes down. One example can be given of a sponge, a bath sponge, that when it's full of water, even if you don't press it, water will come out. If you press it, lots of water will come out. But the more you squeeze it, the less water will come out, and eventually it becomes so that you have to squeeze it very, very hard even to get a little water. So similarly in youth, generally, the senses are strong and one can enjoy sense gratification with very little effort. But the more one engages in sense gratification, the less ability one has to do so. And at the end of life, even if you try very hard, it's difficult to get any sense gratification whatsoever. So that's Krishna's mercy, that one who's trained in hearing about the reality of life will understand, oh, now this body is coming to an end, there's no opportunity to enjoy, now I have to become very serious about spiritual life. But in old age, unless one is prior trained, then one becomes more bodily conscious. In youth, one is bodily conscious by enjoying the senses, that the euphoria of trying to enjoy of sense enjoyment. That's described in the Bhagavatam as being the sexual desire one has upon seeing his beautiful wife. That is like a whirlwind which blows the dust, and then one's eyes become completely covered with the dust and you can't see anything. So one becomes unable to see reality. Apashyatam atmatattvam griheshu grihamedhinam. Those who are attached to family life cannot see the reality of the soul, topics of the soul. There are so many examples given. So in youth one is overcome by sensual enjoyment, and it's the euphoria of it makes one forget or covers one's consciousness of spiritual understanding. And in old age, just the attempt to survive completely absorbs one in bodily consciousness. One becomes conscious of the body not through enjoying it, but through suffering through it, as one feels the pains in the joints and the difficulty to even walk up a few steps. So old age is another phase of bodily consciousness. Although in youth it seems that bodily consciousness is something very nice, but in old age one feels the body to be painful. But if one is trained, he knows that yes, the body is painful, but I'm not the body. So he should know that this struggle is there, and then I will have to die. So let me think of Krishna before I die. This example is given here. Srila Prabhupada often gave that when you're in when you're flying an airplane, first of all, you may be trained how to fly an airplane. You'll go in a 2-seater cockpit with the driver, with a flight instructor. Because if you do anything wrong, then pretty good chances you're going to die and smash the whole aircraft also. In that sense, it's more dangerous than driving a car, because if you skid or you I don't know, there are all kinds of things you can do in a car. It's very dangerous to go in a car. But with an airplane, in a car you may skid and then it may crash and you can survive. But in an airplane, if you lose control, then there's not much chance of surviving, unless you have an ejector seat, which is usually only in military aircraft. And then there's not that good a chance of surviving, even in an ejector seat. So the flight instructor will give you so many directions, both on the ground and in the air. But eventually, if you have to fly a plane solo, then that's it. You just have to remember what was instructed to you. You won't generally be allowed to fly a plane solo unless they trust you. Even if they don't care about you losing your life, they do care about the very expensive plane that you're flying. So, generally one will be highly trained. Of course, during wars, sometimes it happens that they run out of pilots because the pilots get shot down one after another, and then they have to put some people in with minimal training. They're sent out not just to fly the plane, but to shoot also. And that was I don't know if nowadays they have, but that was in the Second World War. The British were making planes and sending up raw pilots. Probably the Germans were too. I don't know, from the British side. This example is given. You're on your own. The example is given at the time of death. You're on your own. Bengali saying that Prabhupada sometimes used to quote, Bhajan kara, sadhan kara, marche janleha. Whatever sadhana and bhajan we perform throughout life, we'll see at the time of death. How serious that was, how we're going to remember Krishna at the time of death. Srila Prabhupada, once you can hear one recording, he's imitating the parrot, is chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He said, you can train a parrot to chant Hare Krishna. But when the cat comes, he'll go, ee, 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 ee. Srila Prabhupada was quite expert in imitating various sounds of various animals and birds. But this is the example that the parrot is chanting. He may chant all day, but it doesn't have any spiritual absorption in doing so. There's no. So when the cat comes, then he just lets out a cry of distress. So everything will be tested at the time of death. And we're on our own. Well, not exactly. In Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, it seems that most devotees pass away because it's Sankirtan, Bahubhe Militva Yat Kirtan Iti Sankirtan. That kirtan which is performed with many devotees, that is called Sankirtan. Means in association. Sangha. So devotees, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, are not fully on their own. It's not like in previous ages where self-realization was largely an individual effort. Of course, people had gurus, but they would take instruction from the guru and then practice. There wasn't this sangha of everyone trying to help each other. Another example is given of the sticks all bound up together. One twig is easily broken, but if you get a bunch of twigs and tie them together, they're not easily broken. So Sange Shakti Kalo Yuge. In Kali Yuga, strength comes from association. Of course, there's no guarantee that we'll pass away in the association of devotees. Death can come at any time, and that's true for devotees as much as non-devotees. So we should consider this and think this, and not think that, well, I'll just drift along in spiritual life, and then at the time of death devotees will come and chant Hare Krishna, and I'll go back to Godhead. It's trying to get the best of both worlds. Let me enjoy here and I'll enjoy there also. But the very idea of trying to enjoy this material world, and the very idea of let me not give myself fully to Krishna, is anti-devotional. So it may be that even if we get these people chanting Hare Krishna, then if we have this seed of anti-devotion in our heart, then we may not go back to Godhead. If we don't really want to, then why should Krishna take us there? And why would Krishna's associates who protect the entrance to the spiritual world, why should they let us in and say, well, they were all chanting Hare Krishna when I died? Well, that's all right, but that's not any guarantee. What are you going to do when you come here? You can't smoke a cigarette here. You want to enjoy yourself in the material world? Well, you have to go to the material. You have to remain in the material world. So there's no guarantee. Manu, in this regard, warns that we have to make our own effort. There's some verses from Manu Samhita. Generally, we think that, well, I suppose those who haven't studied Manu Samhita think that it's just some directions about how to live in this world according to the laws of dharma, but there's spiritual instruction there also. And philosophy is there, and instructs about the supremacy of Narayana at the very beginning. So Manu says that in the next world, neither father, nor mother, nor wife, nor sons, nor relations stay to be one's companions. Whatever you've done in this life, that's the only thing that you'll take to the next life. So we may have so many strong attachments. We feel, I can't live without you, but hey, you're going to have to live without, because we can't dictate. I love you forever, but then death parts us. Till death us do part is an English saying, another English saying which became the name of some stupid TV program. Till death us do part. Death will separate us. So what can we bring to the next life? These Egyptians, pharaohs, and others also, in South America also. The great kings were buried with all gold and all kinds of things they're supposed to take to their next life, but it's stupid because they can't take anything with them. We only bring with us the results of our actions in this life, whether it's good or bad. So better be good. We're born alone. We're one discrete living being. We struggle in this world as one discrete, individual, unique living being. We die alone. And the results of our activities, that is for us. Good or bad. Sukriti or dushkriti. Pious or sinful activities. We're responsible for what we do. When we die, the body is burned, and the relatives, they come and they go away, and that's it, finished there. They become averse. They don't even like to see us. The same body. That same body becomes inauspicious. So the relatives don't like to see it. The attendant at the burning gut. They were mostly when bodies are burned, the people who are burning, they stay, and the relatives pay them something. You see, make sure it's all burned. They don't wait to see it's all burned. They just see the beginning, they've done their duty, and they come away. They won't wait to see the dead body. So they will become inimical to you. So the only thing you've got is what? Pious activities we've executed in this life. So we should, again, I'm going on paraphrasing Manu here. Therefore we should accumulate pious activities. Of course, in the spiritual sense, we understand this doesn't mean simply feeding the poor, opening schools and things like that, but there's spiritual piety, directly spiritual. That will be our companion after death. Let that go with us. Otherwise, if we have bad activities, then we're going to have to suffer in future. Therefore, Manu says, and I'm going to quote instead from Chanakya, which Srila Prabhupada often quoted this similar thing. Manu continues, therefore, Tyaja durjana sangsargam bhaja sadhu samagamam kuru punya ahoratra smaran nityam anityadvam. Remembering that everything in this world is temporary, we should associate with saintly people and give up the association of non-saintly people. And we should perform activities conducive for our ultimate welfare day and night. This is the recommendation, how to live in this world. We should live in this world with the aim to come out of it. Otherwise we'll remain within it. Manu elsewhere states that one who understands, one who has complete and proper insight into the nature of this world can become free from the bondage of this world. But if we don't know that, then we'll simply go around and round and again and again and again in the cycle of birth and death. It's an easy point to understand, isn't it? If we know what is the cause of our bondage, then we can start to become free from it. But if we don't know, then we'll have to continue in it. Therefore, atato brahma jignasa. Having attained this human birth, we should inquire into the nature of ultimate reality. So Manu gives some idea of the path to be taken by not injuring any living being, by detaching the senses from the objects of enjoyment, by following the Vedic practices, by practicing austerities, we can attain to the state beyond birth and death. This is also, well, in many places in Shastra, in Bhagavad-gita, tapasa brahmacharyena shamena cha damena cha. There's a whole list of pious activities. That one, tapasya, brahmacharya, subduing the senses. But the conclusion is that especially for this Kali Yuga, one should chant Hare Krishna. It's not possible to follow all these things otherwise. Then, some in Manu, as elsewhere, there is a description of the body that we tend to be very attached to. What is it? It's a body composed of 5 elements. It's like a house where the bones are the beams that hold the body together, the skeleton. It's just like a house. You build a building and the pillars and the beams, they hold it together. And everything is built around that. So this body is based on bones, held together by tendons. The flesh and blood are the mortar. The thatch on the roof is the skin, is the on top, the outer covering. It's foul smelling, filled with urine and stool, infested by old age and sorrow, the seat of disease, harassed by pain, gloomy with passion, perishable. That's the body. We have to quit it. Sounds good that we should quit it, isn't it? We don't want to die, but if we consider what death means, leaving the body. But if we consider what this body is, we should be quite happy to leave it. But then we'll get another body and another, unless we come to the state beyond birth and death. So that is advised. Go beyond birth and death. Leaving this material body, it's like a tree on the riverbank collapses into the water, or a bird flies off from the tree. We go away. The tree collapses into the water and is swept away in the water. It's going away. We continue to exist, but not in the same position. Whatever position we were in the past is gone forever. So in this way, Manu teaches detachment, and the full understanding of this is given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Not simply to become detached from this world, but to become attached to Krishna. So in this light, Manu should be understood. The rules and regulations how to live in this world, but that is all aimed ultimately at getting out of this world, as Manu himself states, pravritya sarvabhutanam nivriting cha mahapalam. He says that everyone is attached to the path of living in this world, but the real best benefit is from the path that leads us out of this world. So the Pandavas and Draupadi have been strictly following the rules of dharma as given by Manu and others throughout their life, and now they will follow it ideally also at the last stage of life by preparing themselves to go back home, back to Godhead. And in that age it was more of an individual effort, and especially because they were, although they're all pure devotees, their relationship, at least superficially, was on a familial level. So they quit the family, they quit each other, and individually, ekantamati, they fix their mind fully on Krishna, and in this way prepared to go back home, back to Godhead. In Kali Yuga, we need all the help we can get in this life, and at the time of death, certainly we should help those who are at the last stage of life by chanting Hare Krishna in their presence, reading Krishna books. Srila Prabhupada himself set the perfect example of how to leave this world with a prolonged vigil at his bedside, with the devotees were with him all the time, chanting Hare Krishna, reading Krishna book, and even he went on dictating his Bhaktivedanta purports. Hare Krishna. Any question about this? Yeah. No, I didn't say they went back to Godhead because their body is not material. I said they went in the self-same body. You can have a material body and go back to Godhead, but it doesn't mean that you'll be in the same body. Generally those who go back to Godhead, they leave, that is mukti hitvanyata rupam. Giving up other bodies, we accept our original spiritual body. But in the case of the Pandavas, because they were pure devotees, from the very beginning, they're eternal associates of Krishna, so their body is not material from the beginning. So, is that understood now? I interrupted you as you were asking a question because you were quoting me as having said something which I didn't say. So the premise of your proposed question was incorrect, so therefore I interrupted. The Pandavas are stated to have descended from demigods in the Mahabharata, yeah. They were born of demigods via Kunti and Madri, yeah? And Krishna was born of who? Vasudeva and Devaki, or Nanda and Yashoda from the Vrindavan version. But still they are fully on the spiritual platform. There's some show of their having material parents, or parents of this material world. Yeah, I'll ask you afterward. Yeah.
We have to leave all attachments and whatever bindings that work. And the comments showing there, some comments was lost from them, gone subsequent, and how it differs with these statements.
We have to leave all attachments, and you're quoting Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Who said that? Mayavad conception, yeah. How do both of them go together? I don't understand what the question is. You have to make it more specific. There should be some clear question. If you say something like a zebra has stripes and a banana is yellow, so can you explain? You have to show what the question is. I don't see the connection between the two things that you've said. Material world is false, so there's nothing to become detached from. And then, so why do they say Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya? If it's not real, how can you be attached to it? Is that your question? Go and ask them. It's their nonsense philosophy. There are so many contradictions in it. You've just unearthed one of the contradictions in Mayavad. Well done. It doesn't make sense. That's why we don't accept it. They say we have to become free of attachments to this material world, but then they also say it doesn't actually exist. So it's contradictory. It's one of the many self-contradictory positions of Mayavad. There are so many. The Vaishnavas, who is that? Vadiraj Tirtha, he wrote a refutation, taking all their positions and refuting them all. Also, they say that everything is all... There are so many things wrong with their philosophy. then, well, if we're all ultimately Brahma, then we're all ultimately spiritual. How do we get in illusion? And if everything is all one, but there's a state of oneness, and there's also a state of being in Maya, then that's two-ness. There are two kinds of states. There's so many problems with their philosophy. If all the jivas are one, and if one gets liberated, they should all get liberated. So many problems. It doesn't make any sense. But if you point it out to them, they'll say, well, it's all words, and words have no meaning. What they say has meaning, but when you point out, they're talking, which means that they ascribe some meaning to what they say. But when you point out they're talking nonsense, they say words have no meaning. Your words have no meaning. That's true. But then they say no words have any meaning. Anyway, they're a bunch of rascals. That's the summation. Yeah, really, because they're not sincere. Otherwise, they couldn't maintain such a nonsensical philosophy. They just do so to try to avoid Krishna. That's all. Yes, please.
Then we learned that Maharaj, that each soul is different. So, will the karma of father pass on to his son, or pass on to his wife, children?
Shared karma. That is there also. That is there also. For instance, if the father approves of the son doing some sinful activity, the father has to share in that. And the father is supposed to be the guru of the family, so if he doesn't guide them properly and they commit wrong activities, he has to be responsible for that. Just like if the parent, the child does something wrong, then at school, then the teachers may complain to the parents, say you're not training your children. Of course, nowadays neither the parents nor the teachers think it's their duty to train the children in anything. But you're from a previous generation, so when you were going to school, you knew that if you did something wrong, the teachers would complain to your parents, is it not? And parents would feel ashamed that because your behavior reflects badly on them. So that's there. And also there is some factor of helping even after death. That's why there's the offering shraddha and all these things. So we're not totally alone. We may go alone, but some help can be offered from this plane also. But this is being emphasized, that ultimately we're responsible for our own spiritual life. We accept a guru and then we expect the mercy of the guru, and the guru will help us, but we can't be lazy and saying, okay, now I got a guru, so let him just do everything and I don't have to bother. Just now I was listening to a recording of Srila Prabhupada, as he often said that the Christians say that Jesus died for our sins, so let us go on sinning and Jesus will take away all the reactions. Srila Prabhupada is very strongly dismissive of this idea. It's insincerity. Actually, it's insincerity. So, anything else? Yes, please.
When we know that attachment causes suffering, then why someone that increases attachment?
When attachment, we know it causes suffering, why should we get into family life? Generally that's required, because although attachment causes suffering, simply by knowing that is not usually enough to detach us from this world. So one is advised to go through family life, but at the same time cultivate spiritual knowledge and spiritual understanding, Krishna consciousness, and become attached to Krishna. Otherwise, if one tries to become detached simply on the strength of knowledge without realization, it's likely that one will fall into sinful life and indulge in sensual desires in a manner which is not prescribed by Shastra. So family life affords one the opportunity to indulge in material desires, but in a regulated way and in a manner in which we can also simultaneously cultivate higher knowledge, higher understanding, Krishna consciousness. For young men especially, if they have the conviction that they want to become totally free from this material world, if they're unmarried, if they're actually fit for it, they can enter a life of the commitment to spend their whole life, this life, without the entanglement and burden of family life. But others can also accept that entanglement and burden and at the same time practice Krishna consciousness. And as they get older, gradually come out of that attachment and become more detached, and as the children are married, then can dedicate fully to Krishna consciousness. For women, it's always recommended marriage, because the woman's birth means that there is, from previous birth, there's more material attachment, so the psychology that goes with that requires that they, for their spiritual advancement, in almost all cases, if they can serve a dharmic, Krishna conscious husband, that will be best for their spiritual advancement. Yeah, something else, sir? No, wait a minute. Yeah, there's something else you have there? Oh, okay. All right. Will one remember one's past impious activities after having gone to the spiritual world? Srila Prabhupada explained there might be some remembrance of that, like remembering a nightmare or something like that. But he also said that the knowledge of that will, knowing that, then we won't be inclined to go back to that. What's that?
How can we understand reciprocation of Krishna with our material senses, since we are not exalted like Buddha?
How can we understand the interaction of Krishna with our material senses, since we are not exalted like Subhadra? I don't exactly understand the question. What does it mean, the interaction of Krishna with the material senses? Reciprocation with the material senses. Well, generally Krishna does that through the material energy. Material senses are used for material enjoyment, and that is afforded by the material energy. Krishna reciprocates with our senses when we engage them in his service. That's the whole definition of bhakti. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So we can experience that when we chant Hare Krishna and sing and dance. We can experience Krishna's reciprocation. When we offer with sincerity fruit, flower and water to Krishna and pray, Krishna please accept it, we can appreciate Krishna's mercy, how he's so merciful to accept this. How can we? I wouldn't get into too much psychological analysis here. We don't have to be following so much in the academic method where we have to try and understand everything in all detail. Just to offer fruit, flower and water to Krishna, pray Krishna please accept it, and feel how Krishna is pleased with that acceptance. Maybe analyze the neurons in the brain when we offer something. There's no need for all this. No need. Krishna is merciful. Let's celebrate that and not. Of course, philosophically, the acharyas, they also analyze that, how Krishna is merciful, but not in the way of this modern academics. Even if we don't analyze, if we simply offer something with sincere desire that Krishna please take that, and Krishna will accept it. Yeah.
How do we basically defend Manu to the...
How do we defend Manu to all these demons who reject Manu? I didn't get into that so much. There are many. It's one of the many things that the Krishna conscious movement has to do. Because in Manu, at least the version of Manu that we have now, there are many things which might seem to be, well, definitely according to the modern humanistic, egalitarian outlook, we accept it as axiomatic that all humans are equal. Well, we reject that from the outset, and Manu doesn't at all. So it's a completely different outlook. We can begin with establishing, as Srila Prabhupada, all his preaching, all his presentation of Krishna consciousness began. First of all, we have to understand that we are not the body. We get one body after another, and the present body that we have is due to our past, previous activities. So from a start, we're not equal, because some people are sada sadyoni janmasu karanam guna sangasya. We get better or worse situations according to our past, previous activities. So Manu starts with that understanding that someone is born in a... Krishna also says, Shuchinang Srimatam Gehe Yoga Brashto Vijayate. Someone who's a yogi in a previous life gets born in a high family. And then, what is that? Murha Janmani. The demons, they get born again and again in very low bodies. So it's not that we're all the same from birth. We can begin with that. The whole concept of modern life in which they think that they're so advanced and we're so advanced in human civilization, it's all based on the misunderstanding of the self as the body. So if we're going to defend Manu against these demons who attack Manu as being against women and against everyone except Brahmins and maybe a little bit Kshatriyas, then first of all we have to understand the philosophical basis. So that's our first point. Unless you understand this, you can't understand anything. We have a lot of preaching to do. So we'll finish there. Hare Krishna. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.